We all know the movie Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Some people love it, a lot of people hate it, but I thought I'd do a review of the movie. I'm going to break this review down into several parts and cover as much as I can in each part. This will be a scene-by-scene analysis that will go through the entire movie and try to really discover what makes it good or bad. There's a lot to get into, so let's just jump right in. The film opens with a visual and audio callback to A New Hope, and we see the Resistance escaping from their planet. The First Order shows up and they have this massive Star Destroyer called a Dreadnought. This thing is huge, and yup, you guessed it, has a big laser gun on it. This has been done so many times, it's not even remotely exciting anymore. The First Order notices an X-Wing approaching in attack position. Not sure why they didn't just immediately fire on an enemy fighter in attack position, but then they find out that it's Poe Dameron. Poe is literally the man who just destroyed the Starkiller base, the First Order's HQ and greatest weapon. Poe is their arch nemesis, and they kinda just let him sit there. They let him get on the intercom and he talks with General Hux. He does this weird gag where he pretends he's still on hold while Hux is talking. Hux continues to fall for it until his fellow officer tells him that he's tooling with him. Poe then says a "your mom" joke. There's a "your mom" joke in Star Wars. This finally gets Hux fired up, and he orders to attack Poe. Poe does this like engine boost thing, and he flies forward to the Dreadnought. The First Order watches in horror as he takes out the surface cannons on the ship. Poe tells Tally, who I guess is like another commander, to start her approach. Remember this for later. So now the First Order decides to send out TIE fighters. I'm not sure what took so long. They're attacking the last of the Resistance, and it doesn't even seem like they expected a fight. I have no clue what their plan was here. Poe is hit by a TIE fighter, and his weapon systems stop. He says he needs BB-8 to fix them to destroy the last cannon when the bombers are toast. Remember that for later. An officer informs the captain of the Dreadnought that the laser is ready to fire. He orders to fire on the base. Are you kidding me? They choose to fire on an evacuated, stationary base when the entire fleet is right in front of them, which can jump to light speed at any moment. The base is evacuated and it's on the planet. It's not going anywhere. Even if there was troops down there, it shouldn't be the first target. The fleet has everyone on it, literally. The last of the Resistance is directly in front of them. I don't need to repeat myself. Obviously, this is done for plot convenience. If the fleet was destroyed right here, the movie would be over. That's why it's fiction, and you can write it so this doesn't happen in ways that make sense. For example, you can have the charge up time for the laser be longer, but it doesn't matter, you just have to eliminate the base being a target. That is so incompetent, it's baffling. This is like first draft stuff here, this is crazy. So, the base is fully evacuated and out of nowhere, Leia calls off the attack. Again, what was their plan? The whole time, it's made clear that using bombers to take out the Dreadnought was the plan. When Poe needs BB-8 to fix the weapon systems, and when Poe tells Tally to come, it's clear what the plan is. I guess Leia calls it off because the base is clear, but then why were bombers ready to fight? Just in case or something? So for whatever reason, the attack is being called off, but Poe turns off his comm system and goes ahead and does it anyway. BB-8 is able to fix the guns by smashing his head into the console. Okay. Poe is then able to destroy the last cannon. So the Resistance bombers just appear out of nowhere into the fight. Does Leia not have the authority to call them off? I thought she was in charge here. A battle ensues and it is visually very cool. But these weird bomber ships are just terrible. They're massive and slow and they get torn apart so easily. I mean, in universe, what is the point of their design? It doesn't even make sense. Whatever happened to Y-Wings? Yes, it's supposed to look like a World War II bomber, but it just doesn't make sense to even exist in this universe. It comes down to one last bomber. The girl in the gunner's seat sees that the person who has to drop the bomb is dead. It doesn't show how or why this person is dead, and I'm really not sure if this was some kind of mistake. He's just dead for no reason. Anyway, an explosion knocks her down to the bottom of the bomb bay. Oh, by the way, the Dreadnought captain finally orders to fire on the fleet. It's about time, genius. So now there's a big ticking clock. Luckily, the girl is able to knock the remote down and drop the bombs. People like to rag on this part because it defies physics, but look, Star Wars doesn't really adhere to the laws of space, so I don't really think it's a big deal. Apparently the bombs are magnetized and that's why they can be propelled downwards, but this could have been clarified with one little line to establish that this is the case, but whatever. The explosion of the Dreadnought is so massive that it engulfs the bomber, so even if the ship wasn't without a pilot from the TIE fighter crashing, it kinda looks like it was still a suicide run anyway. Further proving these bombers are so dumb and really counterintuitive. First Order watches as the Dreadnought withers away and the fleet escapes. Shouldn't have been written by Rian Johnson, retard. Snoke confronts Hux about this and slams him onto the ground. This movie shreds any coolness that Hux had before and turns him into a total clown.
You should have fired at the cruisers first instead of being retarded.
We couldn't, sir. This film was written by Rian Johnson.
Good God.
Hux claims that Snoke doesn't have to worry, and that they have the Resistance tied on the end of a string. Oh boy. Finn wakes up from his coma after getting his spine sliced up by Kylo Ren's lightsaber in The Force Awakens. I guess this devastating injury pretty much has no effect. I figured that maybe he would have some kind of like robotic spine, or he'd call attention to it at least, but no. A little detail I do like is that Finn's first word when waking up is Rey. This is definitely true to his character in The Force Awakens, his main motivation being Rey. In an attempt at humor, he falls out of the medical bed, spraying liquid everywhere. Poe finds Finn and the first thing he asks is, "Where's Rey?" Again, a good character moment while also allowing the film to answer this question by cutting to the island from The Force Awakens. Let me put this into a perspective for those who aren't super huge Star Wars fans. The end of The Force Awakens showed Rey finding Luke. Luke is shown to be old, in exile, and almost sad looking. The Force Awakens set up an amazing cliffhanger. What will Luke say to Rey in response to his lightsaber outstretched in front of him? Luke hadn't been on screen in over 30 years, and what with him being the hero of the original Star Wars trilogy, his return to the films was extremely looked forward to. The Force Awakens kept us waiting for 2 years to see what would happen. The Last Jedi does a great job building up this moment. Awe-inspiring, emotional music plays over beautiful shots of the island. We watch as Luke, with trembling fingers, take the lightsaber from Rey. A great shot of his robotic hand grasping the saber is shown, reminding us of that scene from The Empire Strikes Back, where Luke lost his hand along with that very same weapon. The music builds, and it focuses on Luke. Something is about to happen. And... he tosses it behind him as the music stops, and I swear you can practically hear the record scratch. They made this epic, emotional, legendary 2-year-long cliffhanger and turned it into a joke. Welcome to Rian Johnson's Star Wars. I'm sure you've heard the term subverting expectations. It's a sort of theme or motto for this film. Countless things happen to subvert expectations, regardless of the thing making narrative sense or being narratively satisfying. Luke just walks past Rey and retreats into his hut. Porgs, these little bird things made for marketing and toys, fish out Luke's lightsaber from the water, and Rey sees Luke's X-Wing submerged under the water. Luke, in his hut, seems to have just changed clothes, now looking even more dark and homeless, somehow. Rey knocks on the door, and Luke's first spoken line after over 30 years is an angry, "Go away." Chewie busts open the door, and Luke yells, "Chewie, what are you doing here?" We're getting the idea that friendly, optimistic, heroic Luke Skywalker is dead. Rey tells Luke that he needs to come on the Falcon, and Luke responds with, "Where's Han?" It then cuts to Kylo Ren. Before I go on, let's talk about the fact that Luke's reaction to Han's death is never shown. His best friend of 40 years. These two were war partners who saved each other's lives over and over. Two classic hero friends, and we never see Luke finding out about his death or how he feels. This is a disaster. It was honestly already a slap in the face that they never so much as share a single frame on screen together, but now this? Anyway, Kylo is going to see Snoke. Hux is just finishing explaining whatever it was he meant by tied on the end of a string, and Snoke praises him. I'm not sure how the Supreme Leader wasn't aware of this secret plan, but okay. Snoke asks Kylo about his wound, and Kylo dismisses it. Then Snoke was on a rant about Kylo's potential, saying he thought he could be a new Vader, but he was wrong. Snoke demands Kylo take off his mask, and when Kylo does, Snoke makes fun of him and calls him a young Solo. Snoke berates Kylo, telling him that he's unbalanced, and in sort of a meta moment, says he was bested by a girl who never held a lightsaber. This upsets Kylo, and Snoke hits him with some forced lightning. Snoke dismisses him by calling him a child in a mask. So I'm not really sure why Snoke is just now calling his mask ridiculous when he's been wearing it in meetings for who knows how long. Regardless, in the elevator, Kylo smashes his helmet to pieces. I suppose this signifies the end of his more childish ways, and now it's personal. Not much to say about this scene. Nothing too bad about it. It's alright. I think the idea of Kylo destroying his helmet and trying to be more mature in a way is a good idea and is pretty interesting for his character. We see Rey explaining to Luke why the Resistance needs him. She says that the First Order will control all major systems in weeks. But how? I understand that the Republic planets are gone, but can the First Order really just take over? The galaxy got out of Imperial control just 30 years prior. Is there no one willing to fight? We never get to see the First Order's rule, and we still don't even know exactly what they are. In the original trilogy, we were shown the Empire's occupations and how they tortured the galaxy. But here we see nothing. The only thing done to make us feel the urgency and importance of the First Order's rule is one line. This makes the First Order not threatening at all, because we as the audience have no reason to be scared of them. Sure, they blew up a couple of planets, but the machine that allowed them to do that is gone. We're never exactly shown the scale of the First Order or where it is they get all their resources. It's just crazy that still, by the second movie, there's not really any groundwork for what the First Order even is. Luke totally ignores her plead and just says he won't do it. Rey follows Luke across the island, and Luke squeezes green milk out of this weird dinosaur thing. Yes, this is really dumb. I suppose I did wonder how Luke gets his food. I would have much rather liked the screen time to be used to show, I don't know, Luke's reaction to Han's death. There's more of these weird scenes where like Luke is fishing or something. I don't know, it's just unnecessary really. It kind of slows down the movie, really. Rey gets distracted and sort of called to this dark, foggy tree thing. She goes inside to see a bookshelf of the old Jedi texts. Luke comes in and asks Rey who she even is. She avoids the question. Luke says, "Where are you from?" Rey says, "Nowhere."
No one's from nowhere.
Jakku.
Alright, that is pretty much nowhere.
Here's another problem with this film. It's undercutting serious moments with jokes. It's just distracting. It was a nice, quiet, personal moment, and then they stuck that stupid line in, and it just totally stops any momentum the scene had. Luke presses Rey about why she's here, and Rey explains she needs Luke to teach her what to do with the feelings she has inside. Of course, referring to the Force. Luke denies this and said it's time for the Jedi to end. We will discuss this time for the Jedi to end topic later. The Resistance fleet comes out of hyperspace, and it cuts to Leia slapping Poe in the face. She scolds him for carrying on the attack. Poe says there were heroes on the mission, and Leia says, "Dead heroes, no leaders." What is that even supposed to mean? It's like, is she like discrediting their sacrifice? This line is just awkward. Leia explains to Finn that Rey has a tracking beacon, and that's how she'll get home. They discuss finding a new base when suddenly the First Order appears. Now there's an even more massive ship called the Supremacy. It's Snoke's ship. This thing is so large that it is as wide as the whole First Order fleet. They panic, and when they're about to jump to hyperspace again, Leia realizes they've been tracked through lightspeed. Now, we see what tied on the end of a string meant. Poe and all the fighters run to the hangar. Kylo Ren is flying around in his own fighter. He flies into the ship hangar and blows it up with a missile, killing all of the fighter pilots except Poe. Okay. What? This is such an overpowered move. Why hasn't this been done before? I know this sounds dumb, but really, like, yes, it makes sense to do this, but it's never been established as something you can do. This is like the kid who says gun in rock, paper, scissors to win. Like, okay, sure, it would work, but it's just not part of the game. This disregards all other space battles in the entirety of all Star Wars. To someone who doesn't really understand Star Wars, this might sound like a dumb point to nag on, but if you've seen the other space battles, you'll know that this is just, it's just dumb. It just shouldn't happen. It doesn't make sense because it's so overpowered. It doesn't create for a good story or a good action scene. It's like how in films where guns are used, recoil and reloading and stuff isn't really ever taken into account. This is of course to create more exciting action scenes and things like that. It makes for a better film. It's sort of the same thing here. Sure, would it, I guess, be a realistic move to just destroy the hangar from the outside? I guess. But it doesn't make a good narrative. They concentrate all shields on the rear, knowing there are fighters flying around. What? Are you kidding me? So, of course, Kylo and the TIE fighters come up to blow out the bridge. Man, how are we gonna take out the bridge if the shields are up? Oh, you didn't hear? This film was written by Rian Johnson, so he made everyone extremely incompetent. He had the Resistance put on all the shields in the back. The bridge is unshielded, even though they know you're out there. Oh, sweet. Leia and Kylo have a little Force moment, and Kylo doesn't fire on the bridge, but the other TIE fighters do. The bridge is destroyed, and Leia is morbidly sucked out into space. We'll come back to this. The extreme incompetence that just went on right here is insane. I'm not sure how in the world the Resistance could be so unbelievably incompetent to put all shields for their ship on the rear, knowing that there are TIE fighters flying around with missiles and lasers that could just blow out the glass to the bridge. Again, this is first draft, no knowledge of Star Wars stuff. I can't even believe this is in the film. I mean, this is one of the things that is irrefutable in the film. It's just, there's no counter to this, unless of course you just call the Resistance incompetent. Hux asks his inferior why they can't just simply destroy the fleet right here. The guy explains that they're lighter and faster. How convenient that all of the Resistance cruisers can go just fast enough to outrun every single one of the First Order ships. This makes no sense. Hux introduces the plot, which is waiting for the Resistance to run out of fuel. Riveting. I guess every ship here is going its max speed. I'm not sure why the First Order doesn't just send out more of its TIE fighters, because clearly they have pretty much their whole battalion here. I'm not sure why they don't just go a little bit faster. I'm not sure how the Supremacy, with engines the size of the Resistance cruiser, can't really catch up, but again, this is one of those things. I don't have to keep repeating myself. Anyone can see why this is dumb. Now, we see Leia's body floating out in space. Kind of weird now that Carrie Fisher's actually dead, but hindsight is always 20/20. But then her fingers start to twitch, her eyes open, and she flies through space back to the ship. My goodness, this is just awful. Number one, it looks ridiculous. Okay, I'm sorry, but it does. Number two, physically, this makes no sense. Time seems to just literally freeze as she's floating out there, because I'm pretty sure the ships would just, keep flying forward. They would have passed her by, but somehow she just floats back and everything stands still. I mean, you know what I'm trying to say, right? The ships are moving at an incredibly fast speed. Not light speed or anything, but still very fast through space. Something gets blown out in space and, well, it's kind of just gone by the wayside. You get what I'm trying to say. And number three, how is she able to do this? How? Yes, we all know she has the Force, but how can she pull off surviving in space with no training whatsoever? I've heard the excuse that the Force can work like adrenaline. It gives you extreme strength when you need it. Well, that's never been established. That's total conjecture. Ask Luke about that. The Force didn't give him any adrenaline surge. This is so dumb. And Poe and the rest of them just watch as she does it. I don't need to go on. You all see why this is silly. There could have been one line saying that Luke trained her a little bit, and maybe she knows how to use the Force now, or something like that, but no. It's never established, and in canon, it never happened. Leia is just able to do this. Sort of a pattern with the new Star Wars films where the Force takes no training to do anything with, and you can just do it. Completely going back on what the entire original trilogy set up. So Leia comes back in and they put her on a stretcher. Alright guys, that's going to be it for my part 1 of this review. I'm not sure how many parts this review will turn out to be. I'm just going to work on them as I go. I'll try to keep them all around this under 20 minutes so they don't get too long. Please let me know anything I forgot to cover in this review. Also, be sure to tell your opinion of the movie in the comments. Thank you so much for watching if you've made it this far, and I will talk to you again next time.